As I said earlier, Leonard is an associate member of Veterans for Peace up in Washington State. Uh, he lives on San Juan Island, a really gorgeous, wonderful place that the Golden Rule visited a couple months ago. And we also visited the Bangor Trident submarine base, which is right next door to the Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Action, where Leonard has been involved for many years. And Leonard has written an article. Thank you very much for that nice, concise, and informative article for our Golden Rule newsletter about new developments uh, with new weapons coming on board, scheduled for the Trident submarine base there. And that's what he's going to speak about for a little while to start our meeting off. And if you want to say more about who you are and your background at all, Leonard, feel free. Otherwise, just jump into it.
Anyway, it's really nice to see all of you. And McGregor, great idea for a webinar. Mordecai Vanunu, thanks you. God. Oh, yeah. How many times we've written about him and tried to remind people about Israel's nuclear weapons. But that's for another day. I'll stay focused. And Gerry, just give me a virtual slap if I get off here, too far. I'll just start with two quick things that I think are really pertinent. And for some reason, they both went away for a moment here. But I was just thinking about a quote by Father Richard McSorley, a Jesuit Father Richard McSorley, who back in 1976, and I have it here from an article I wrote a long time ago, who said, "The taproot of violence in our society today is our intention to use nuclear weapons. Once we have agreed to that, all other evil is minor in comparison. Until we squarely face the question of our consent to use nuclear weapons, any hope of large-scale improvement of public morality is doomed to failure." I just wanted to start with that because it somehow came to me as I was making notes and preparing for this, and then saw something that I'll also share before going further. I try to hold that quote close because it's true. Is the U.S. ever going to try to observe international humanitarian law in any way, let alone nuclear weapons? I mean, there's a question of morality here, large scale loss of morality, but that's just something to keep in the back of our minds. But one other quick thing, as I was doing research on this article that Gerry asked me to write, I was frantically writing in the last couple of days. I saw an article, and it was about the Trident system, and I immediately noticed a picture with a caption and when I brought the picture up to make it larger, it was a huge picture taken at where they're building the new Trident submarines, the Columbia class, the gem of the ocean, Columbia. And there was Eleanor Holmes Norton giving an address to all these people assembled from General Dynamics, the government, the Navy, everyone. And I was a bit shocked because I think all of us know that Eleanor Holmes Norton has been an ardent supporter of nuclear abolition and of putting money into human needs. And I had a note to remind myself that Proposition 1 is called the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Conversion Act. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Thomas, I mean, every year really promotes this and works with Eleanor Holmes Norton. And it was just shocking to see that photo. I tried to look further and find her speech. I'll try to get back into her congressional website and see if there's any text or something. But for her to be standing there in front of all these people and with all the flag waving at General Dynamics was shocking. But that's when that quote by Father Richard McSorley came back to mind. It's like, how did this happen? But again, it's something to always remember that, all these people who are, have been working hard somehow, the tiniest level can be corrupted by the system that we're all stuck in the midst of. So anyway, jumping right in here to the heart of the matter of Bangor and Trident. As I wrote this article for Gerry, a lot of things came back to me, and I know again, most people in this country think of our nuclear weapons, and particularly Trident, as a deterrent. That word deterrence comes into play every day of our lives, every speech, every interview, from the Navy to other members of government, talking about deterrence and our nuclear weapons, keeping us safe and keeping the peace, and every possible euphemism and doublespeak that we've been subjected to. And in reality, as Bob Aldridge, the engineer, at one time engineer at Lockheed Martin, who was working on the reentry vehicles for the coming of the first Trident thermonuclear warheads, he came to an understanding that Trident could be used as a second strike defensive weapon, if you can call it defensive, but that in reality it was intentionally being designed to be able to be used as a first strike weapon. And the logical supposition here is that, well, even if we have an inkling that the Russians are about to launch a nuclear strike against us, we could launch a decapitating strike using Trident, because they would know the land-based missiles have been launched immediately, whereas with Trident, there's a bit more of a lag before they would know, and that we could launch a surprise attack, basically taking out all their missile silos. And not until 2017, as I mentioned in this article that I wrote, when Hans Christensen of the Federation of American Scientists wrote this just incredible, groundbreaking article that talked about the superfuse, basically not updated, but basically a brand new triggering device for the W-76 warhead on the Trident missiles that basically vastly increased the lethality of that warhead by, I believe, 3 times. And the idea is that you have a missile silo in Russia, and there's a circle around that missile, which is kind of has to do with the accuracy of our missile. It might land 300 yards, it land maybe half a mile away, who knows what back in the day. But this brought that accuracy in closer so that a smaller yield warhead like the W-76 could do the work of the W-88, which is, I believe, 455 kilotons, whereas the W-76 is 90 kilotons. So this was basically just something that everybody should have been screaming and making noise about, but it just dropped back into the background, as with everything else about nuclear weapons in this country. But in reality, that informed us and confirmed the idea that, yeah, we could be crazy enough sometime, depending on the circumstances, to use Trident as a first strike against Russia. Now, of course, the fine print, and suppose somehow the Navy didn't get the message that Russia, of course, has its own submarines. So, hey, we destroy their silos, of course, their submarines are going to launch a nuclear strike against us, and game over. So again, this, as I begin today, reminds us of the insanity of the nuclear arms race. There's nothing more to say, but I will, that it is just insane that we even have to be sitting here today talking about this and doing all the things that all you wonderful people do to try to abolish nuclear weapons. So jumping in, Trident has been around a long time, far too long. And a long time ago, and when they were just talking about new Trident, or what we're now calling the Columbia, has been officially named Columbia class. And again, I mentioned tongue in cheek, the gem of the ocean, Columbia, the gem of the ocean. And it is really the Navy's gem. It's the crown jewel of the nuclear triad. Even when we talk, and McGregor, I so appreciate talking about, as you have so eloquently all over and over, about the low-hanging fruit. It's like the ICBMs. It's like, duh, we should be able to get rid of those. But, no one anywhere, aside from activists such as ourselves here, will even broach the idea of, oh, abolishing Trident, of not building a new generation of nuclear submarines. They are the fatted calf. People must bow and pray to it in the Pentagon. They must have a chapel there with, with Trident. It's kind of like, the horrific scene in one of those grotesque Charlton Heston movies, Planet of the Apes movies. They're praying to the nuclear missile. I mean, Trident is untouchable. It's been around forever, and it sails the seven seas unseen, unheard for the most part by the Russians. I'm sure they have a pretty good idea of where they are, and they play their games of cat and mouse, which themselves are dangerous. But right now, we have 12. The Navy is in the process, and General Dynamics Electric Boat has the contract to build 12 new Trident submarines. And of course, as I mentioned in the article, I did some quick research to see if it was still as bad as it seems. And just not long ago, there was another announcement based on another Government Accountability Office report that the program is way over budget. Now it's up to 130 billion and counting. This is just to build. That's not life cycle costs, which will run into the hundreds of billions as we move forward. And that's not including new missiles and warheads and everything else. So it's way behind schedule and way over budget. And the problem with being behind schedule is that they keep extending the lifespan of the current Trident submarines, the Ohio class. And ultimately that gets into a safety issue for, the sailors on board, those thermonuclear armed missiles. I mean, if one of those submarines somehow does a deep dive and implodes, due to structural stresses, who heaven knows what's going to happen. And if we don't really know what has happened at the moment, our government, the Navy, people could start to get a little paranoid and wonder if the Russians are behind it, and won't even try to broach scenarios of what that could cause. We know about the accidents, the incidents, and in the past that have almost led to World War III without going into those. So, another risk that is created there. So, these submarines are, of course, costing tons of money that could be much better spent. And of course, they're going to build a new warhead, which will replace both of the existing warheads. It'll be one very large yield warhead, and it will be at least, I'm sure, as accurate, as lethal as the existing warheads. And of course, as they extend the life of the Trident missiles, the day will come and they're already talking of building a new missile. So again, cost after cost after cost, and again, extending this new Cold War and building on this new Cold War that is developing now, not just with Russia, but also with China. Our new evil empire, our new menace that we're going to keep encircling with our Trident submarines. And my prediction is we'll have one or two more submarines here in the Pacific with the new basing, the new Trident subs, because of the pivot to Asia, and it will stay that way, even though Russia, we keep building them into a new and improved nuclear armed enemy. So this game, dangerous game we keep playing, has at the center of it this new Trident system, which will be the submarine, the new warheads, the new missiles. And of course, the bases are undergoing improvements. We have actually a second explosives handling wharf where they load and unload missiles from the subs so that they can check them and put new warheads on and check the old warheads. It's a continual process. And it's not something the Navy had to have, but they went through with it. Even when one of the offices that has to do with safety said that it was not safe to have a second explosives handling wharf so close to the existing wharf. And so there's the danger of an explosion in one explosives handling wharf if they're handling a submarine in the other wharf, and all these crazy things that just happen because the Navy gets its way. And
Thank you, Leonard.
yes.
You
Oh,
want
did I go over? Let me
no,
stop that.
you're about at time, so
Okay, good.
I'll
I
just
wanted to
give
get
you
that out there.
a couple sentences to wrap up, and then go to Q&A. So
Thank you.
if you
No,
had something else you wanted to say that was important before we move on.
no, basically, I was wrapping up there, and sorry because I didn't set my watch right. That those two additional facilities and all the other work that's going on at Bangor is in the hundreds of millions of dollars right there. So we just keep pouring money into Bangor and Trident, and the future looks bleak as we continue to deploy nuclear weapons into the next decades. And Bangor is at the heart of it, the world's largest deployed concentration of nuclear weapons. I love to say that. That's the Federation of American Scientists.
I'd love to.
So, any questions, please?
Yeah,
Or
thank you
comments?
very, very much. That was really informative. And Jim, you're up.
Yeah, so Leonard, thanks. And I guess the question that might be on everybody's mind, or maybe not, the election. Is the sun coming up tomorrow with any of these two candidates? You see any difference?
I hate to say it, but no. And, as much as I would like to and have voted for a third party candidate in the past, I'm terrified to see Trump elected into office. I don't even want to go into the logic or illogic of any of this, but the uniparty is just promotes nuclear weapons as our savior, and the militarism that it promotes it. And the quick answer here is that the way I see it, I'm just hoping and praying, not normally a praying man, but person, but that we get Harris into office, and then we really push forward really strongly and call for general strikes and actions, major mass actions in this country that will, the only thing that I can see bringing, people in power to their knees and saying, okay, maybe we'll at least start to listen. And I mean that, general strikes when it comes to transportation at the docks, down to manufacturing. And I am ready to work with people to bring that forward. But as much as I'm disheartened, and it's nothing new on a certain level with the Democrats over the Republicans, we're at a stage where a second Trump administration, I think from a rational standpoint, would unleash horrors we can't even imagine and lessen the already faltering civil liberties that we have, to a point that doing things like general strikes and nonviolent protests could become so much more dangerous than they might have been in the past. I'll stop there.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Leonard? I would just ask, so maybe for people who may not know about the center, Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Action, maybe just let us know a little bit about that history and that ongoing work there.
Try to do that in 2 minutes or less. I mentioned Bob Aldridge, and Ground Zero began back in the 70s, long before it existed, when Bob went to Jim and Shelley Douglas, co-founders of the Pacific Life Community and ultimately Ground Zero, and said, hey, I can't do this work anymore. And Bob actually, what I call the Christmas miracle, he's a devout Catholic, went home to his large family and said, I don't believe I can do this. And they all supported him. He quit his job. He wrote ultimately a binder this thick, the Trident Resistors Manual, and helped form Ground Zero, which began very humbly by renting a property by the railroad tracks where the rocket motors and warheads were going to be coming, started leafleting at the base, trying to get to know the community and communicate with the local community. Ultimately, the tracks campaign, where they had blockades of the white trains bringing those rocket motors and warheads to the base. Ultimately, the Navy figured out, oh, we'll start using trucks and transport them by road. Ultimately, did an end run around that. But Ground Zero came out of those humble beginnings and kept doing this work of leafleting at the base and with the white trains until that changed. And to this day, all these years later, since the first the USS Ohio came into port here in what, 82? Forgive me, gosh, it's been so long
Yeah,
ago.
82.
82 November, I think. Still doing actions at the gates of Bangor, still leafleting, although we've fallen behind in leafleting throughout the COVID times and such. But again, doing research and writing, legal campaigns. Glenn Milner is known for his lawsuits. One went all the way to the Supreme Court against the Navy, Freedom of Information Act issues, multiple things that we work on. And currently, also the Nippon Myohoji Buddhist order is building a peace pagoda on the property, which will be the first peace pagoda in the Western United States. So we keep trying to move forward and build the center into something that we hope someday will be a museum, of the nuclear age, when we can have a rusting conning tower from a trident perhaps out in the backyard as part of that. But we keep moving forward and trying to do our work. And one last thing I'll say is that we have also, over the past few years, had successful billboard campaigns, and prior to that, bus ad campaigns in Seattle, until they said, oh, we can't do political speech, which was kind of convenient. All of a sudden, someone must have spoken out about what we were doing. So and of course, bannering campaigns on I-5 and other things. So a lot of things we've been doing, and we just keep trying new ideas, and we're always welcome to hear new ones. So I'll stop there and take any
We got
additional
a couple
questions.
hands up.
Harvey or Jim?
Jim Wolgamuth and Harvey Bennett, who happen to be, just coincidentally, the co-hosts of VFP Radio.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
So,
they're going to try to rope you into a radio interview.
yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
probably. I'm getting frustrated because all of the efforts we have with regard to showing people how the danger of nuclear weapons, it's just not working. And how do you fight, if you can, when danger doesn't work and the profit motive is way out in front of everything? How do you get these folks to stop when the profit is still there? Because they know, we know, we know ICBMs are stupid. We know investing in this is all stupid, but it's the profit motive that keeps this train wreck going.
Yes. Oh gosh, I love these tough questions. It's funny because I know all of you here, some very esteemed individuals, have done much more work over many more years than I have, are on board with this call. And when I look at everything that we've tried at Ground Zero and everything that people here have tried, we just haven't been able to wake people up. It's the economy. Yeah, the people, as long as they have jobs and the economy seems to be doing okay, everybody seems to ignore the issues. Although I always like to remind people that one nuclear war can rule your whole day, not to mention the economy and all of humanity's day, and the entire earth that we rely upon. And interestingly enough, one thing I didn't mention is that we co-published a comic book, thanks to Leonard Reifus, who's an longtime, thank you, McGregor, longtime comic book artist and nuclear abolitionist, and as a way to try to get young people engaged, an educational tool. I had a very small part in it, and I would like to see something that's more general, that just that doesn't talk so much specifically about Trident. However, I think this is a really important beginning, trying to reach young people. And I guess 30 seconds more, all I'll say is I've kind of given up on adults, except those present, the people that are
Yeah.
doing the actual work, people that really do get it and understand and are trying everything we can try. My real hope is that we can reach young people somehow and wake them up. There are enough young people, I think, that are waking up, are already awakened and are waking up and are capable of being roused from that slumber and say, what the heck? This is right up there with climate change, because everybody seems to be up there, the young people with climate change, but nuclear weapons are just way too abstract still. And short of an actual nuclear weapon detonating somewhere in our time, which I sincerely hope it never happens, that's the only other thing that can rouse people. And although, God knows what the consequences would be, but I'm really hoping that we can get to young people. So, in terms of any immediate hopes of getting to the adult population, I hope someone has an idea that can really work. But my hope is that we can continue the work we're doing, such as the comic book and any other efforts and I'd love to get some people together and hear ideas and see what we could do together to work on young people, rousing young people. Stop.
Harvey, did you still have something?
I just was interested in everything he was saying because a daughter of ours worked for the Tacoma Dominican Sisters, who it seemed like every week were going out to the Bangor submarine base. And I learned about Archbishop Hunthausen, who called the Trident base the Auschwitz of Puget Sound. Maybe you could resurrect that.
Well, after this is over, I'll share something. I'll send to Gerry some links. And interestingly enough, I have a great photo of the group standing in front of the base, and Bill Moyer, the Backbone Campaign, one August weekend, whichever year that was, going back a few years, helped us with instant banner making. And they made this huge banner that said, Trident is the Auschwitz of Puget Sound, that famous and controversial statement, which in context, even as a Jew, I've had arguments with my wife over that statement. But, when you think about, as Bill Moyer talked about, the flying ovens, and in context of that, I think there are things like Hunthausen's work and things which I've tried to resurrect, as you say, to use that the terminology the sisters would use. We do need to try things, and I don't want to be whatever his name is, like a Howard Stern, some shock jockey, out there and doing things the way people like that do. But we do need to somehow shock people in a ethical, moral, but sincere way into realizing that, the planet is in peril, with climate change, nuclear weapons, we need to shock people. So you give me some initial food for thought here of looking back at what we have done, what things we need to do new. And again, love to have further conversation and really hone in on things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Leonard. This is really valuable. Got our juices flowing, and also filled in some blanks of the information that is important for us all to be aware of. And I know you're going to be with us maybe 12 more minutes. I
at least.
remember you have to run.
As long as I can, I'll stay with you.
But you're welcome. As I told people before, you're also an associate member of Veterans for Peace, and I know you've expressed interest in being more involved with our No Nukes working group. So we welcome that. And maybe in the next year, we'll start working on the mass disruptions that are going to be absolutely necessary for our survival. And this will be one of the places we strategize. So I'd like to move on to the next part of our meeting, which we usually do first, and that's to go around and give everybody a chance to say what they've been up to and what they're concerned about, any ideas they want to throw out. Nobody go on too long, or you don't have to go at all. And then I'm going to wait till to save McGregor for the last, because the last but not the least, because she's got a really excellent proposal for us to consider. Um, and so, anybody want to jump out there or shall I just call on people? Um, how about Jim? You've already spoken a few times. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, Harvey and I are just doing the radio show and we're trying to keep the word going. So Leonard,
Okay.
put your email in the chat.
We have
We
an
want to.
we have an Elbit factory now in Charleston, South Carolina, so we've been out there a few times.
Uh-huh.
The Free Palestine Charleston and with Democratic Socialists, since we don't have
Great.
a peace
Uh,
chapter.
Helen, Jacquard, you got something to say about the Golden Rule, I bet.
Oh, I do indeed. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, we had a really great sailing season. I'm just putting together our post-season newsletter right now, and happy to be here in Clear Lake at home where I can enjoy myself as well as get some work done. And just had a visit by Michelle Marcinet, who is our new project manager. So, we're going to have a program this fall, winter, spring to take people sailing and give people boat tours. But most importantly, we want to reach further into the non-activist communities by reaching out to churches and people of all faiths and schools with people of all age groups and service clubs and places like that, so that we can build a model where we're not traveling at such a frenetic pace, but rather spending our time getting to know a particular community and, like I say, reaching well beyond the choir. Thank you.
Yeah, and that we're going to start that in the birthplace of the renewed Golden Rule, or the restored Golden Rule, and that's Humboldt Bay, Eureka, and Arcata, California, which is where the boat is right now, and we have a lot of support there. So it's kind of going to be in some ways a trial program where we're learning how to better do that kind of work. Then something we would probably want to replicate in San Francisco Bay and Monterey Bay and San Diego Bay and beyond in the next year or so. Okay, Ken Mayer's got your hand up, and I was going to come to you next anyway. So how are you doing, Ken? You're muted.
We had a very interesting event here today in Santa Fe. As most of you know, we are now into our 23rd year of having demonstration every Friday from noon to 1, protesting usually nuclear development. And today was an unusual opportunity because in order to provide the new warheads to those Trident missiles that Leonard was talking about, as well as the new warheads for the Sentinel ICBMs that are planned, they have to have new plutonium pits. Those pits are built up at Los Alamos. They just last week completed their first pit of the new design. And in order to complete the plans up at Los Alamos and get into their required production, they need more additional electric power. And so they proposed to build a 14-mile third electric power line across the Caja del Rio. The Caja del Rio is full of cultural sites, artifacts sacred to the local Pueblo tribes. And today, the Caja Coalition sponsored an event which we participated in, had an event across the street from where Los Alamos National Laboratories has additional space in Santa Fe. They had drummers and dancers from the Jemez Pueblo. They had the governor of the Tesuque Pueblo speaking. It was really quite an impressive affair, and the speeches were all much to the point of how Lanel has a history of destroying local culture and so forth. It was really very well done, but I spoke to the MC of the event afterwards. I said, the one thing that got left out in the talks is the fact that what they're doing, destroying the culture in Caja del Rio, is just a microcosm of the destruction of global culture by nuclear weapons development. So I'm glad we were able to participate, and we planted some seeds for future development on that. And it was a meaningful day in Santa Fe.
Great. Yeah, Greg was telling us a little bit about that before the meeting and showing us a few photos from that. Did you want to expand on that a little bit, Greg?
Let's see if I can make it work here. Oh, cripes. Of course. It works in the rehearsal, but not in the, here we go. Do you see a picture of an intersection?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you hear the audio?
No.
No sound.
Okay. Well, believe me, it sounds real good. The turnout, it was people are estimating 50 to 70 people, and about half were indigenous people. And I just am so impressed with that because it's been old white people up till now. So really connecting with other communities is it's hard to do, but I'm just really stoked that we're that this turnout happened, and this issue has gotten people activated. So Gerry was saying when I talked about this earlier, maybe it's a kind of a model, maybe all over the United States we can connect with communities, that have an issue with some piece of the nuclear weapons program. So that's my bit.
Terrific. Rachel, I know you're preoccupied with a webinar that's going to follow, so I want to give you a chance to say a few words about that and invite people to join if they can.
Thank you, Gerry, so much. From 9 p.m. Eastern Time, which is coming up soon, we at the VFB New York chapter is hosting a special event. This is between the U.S. and Japan, featuring Kuhan Pike Mander. She will be talking about pretty much what we heard today is included, but basically the new type of war is now in the outer space. So what you've been witnessing through your peace activism and also daily life, our life is pretty much digitalized, right? So what is this civilian use of internet, AI actually related to military purposes? If you would like to see the whole total picture, please join us. It's really eye-opening experience. I guarantee it. And pretty much you can find interesting answers to the questions that you people ask now. Thank you. I will put the Zoom link in the chat box now, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Alice, how are you and what's on your mind these days? You've been sharing some good stuff with the listservs. You're muted.
Delighted to be here. I know that whichever monster gets selected, we're going to have to organize. I mean, there's nothing good you can say about Trump, but very little good I can say about Kamala, because they're a three-war system. And actually with Trump, we might not get a war with Russia because he wants to build a hotel in Moscow, so that's in his, of course he'll turn the whole country into a fascist camp, which will be, there's nothing to say except to organize. And I think we should support the kids. They've started it, and we cannot just talk about nuclear weapons. We got to talk about Gaza. We got to talk about the war machine. We have to talk about climate. It's coming. Mother Earth is getting very impatient. You know, if we don't cooperate, we're all going under, whether from nukes or global war, you know, whatever. I mean, we're at a crisis point, and I don't think we're speaking well. And I think what's missing in our country, America, people are so used to blaming everybody else, and they have no idea the opportunity sitting there to negotiate with Russia, to negotiate with China. They've been begging us for years to ban weapons in space. We know we don't even agree. We're off running into space, you know. We're in a race. Putin, when we boasted with Israel, when we knocked out the Stuxnet virus at Iran's enrichment plan, called Obama, actually the New York Times reported this, I can't believe they even said it, and asked the US to negotiate a cyber ban treaty with them. And we said no. And they're voting every year at the UN, China and Russia, for cyber ban treaties, space ban treaties, you know, so, you know, I don't know how else to say it except that we're not communicating to people to understand that the enemy is us, like Pogo said in the 1950s, and that if they got that, we could move our country. So, right. Very good, Glenn. Very good. I close every talk with that. But I mean, people have to understand why the hell that is. And I don't know how we need a good PR guy, you know, to put out with the facts you need to know to really take care of the planet. Anyway.
Thank you, Alice. Very
I'm in
well
New York.
said.
I learned like only about 5 years ago at a Fukushima meeting from a Navajo, because we were taught, and they do the uranium mining, and only they're not Navajo anymore. That's a Spanish word for knife. That New York, that the indigenous, he was excoriating me for not having a Native American welcome people to the meeting. And I said, I'm a New York native. I didn't even know we had any. And he told me the Lenape, and I Googled it. There was a Lenape Center in Manhattan, and I met with the head. And now whenever we have a meeting, the Lenape welcome to the City Hall, to the UN. And he told me that Manhattan, where I live, is a Lenape word, Manhattan, the place of many hills. Can you imagine being 80 years old and never learning that in school? What was wrong with it? Anyway, I wish
Alice. Thank you, Alice. Hollis, you got anything for us today? Hollis?
Yeah, hi everybody. Just a couple of things. Not going to go on too long. I'm on the land of all kinds of natives that used to gather here from all the way from the Sioux to the Hopi, all the way up to Spokane to catch salmon every year. And it used to be so thick with salmon in the river that you could walk across the river on them. So I acknowledge that land. It's not ceded to us. It's unceded land. And the Salish language is back. It's on the rise. People are taking classes. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, the big thing with us is we participated in a rally in the park for an hour with the Inland Northwest Coalition for the Liberation of Palestine. The speakers were absolutely gut-wrenching in their analysis of the situation. So, yeah, we got a few honks and a few people yelling at us. Fine. The big thing with us is we're going to focus on Armistice Day on the 11th, and we've asked the Feast World Kitchen to provide us with a feast, and they are immigrant kitchen from all around the world who've come to Spokane, and they're refugees, and they're putting together a kitchen that serves food, I think, 6 days a week and caters. So we had a surprise. We're going to have a bell ringing at 11, but now it looks like the mayor is going to attend. Oh my gosh, we didn't know she was coming. Our new mayor, and they used to call her Sandinista Lisa because she was working with the Sandinistas back in the day.
That's
So
great.
the after the bell ringing, we plan to do two things, and one is we're going to have this feast because chapter 35 is now 35, and so we're doing 35 is 35, and we'll put together a slideshow and have a feast, and then after that, the president of our chapter has now been promoted to president emeritus. We have a whole new staff now of the executive officers, but Rusty Nelson has suggested that we go out after that and do a peace rally on the corner of Division and Main Street for an hour. So it's a great photo op, and we'll see if what happens. But I agree. What I'm working on is laws of attraction, because if we cannot attract peace, we've tried this white male supremacist thing of trying to force peace on people, and it don't work. So let's be more attractive. What are the laws of attraction? And we need to have, as Leonard was talking about, a permanent peace presence. And that means if you were a big corporation and you wanted to run a campaign, you would be in every media, stimulating every sense of every human being on the planet 24/7, and even more than that. So that's what I'm working on. Thank you.
Great, House. Sounds like a lot of good energy up in Spokane right now. Excuse me. Susan Kuhn, do you have anything to share with us today?
Hi, everybody. Let me put the video on. There. Hi. I don't know. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting in September, but Terry, I don't know if you reported on the September 10th action that we did to block the Air National Guard. So, I mean, I can report on that. Right now, we are nervously awaiting, though, Israel's nuclear bomb launch. Tell you the truth. We thought it might have happened about 10 days ago. We were organizing for a press conference, and then there was a delay, we heard. So we are in waiting in a horrific way. So that's just, that's where we're at right now. Weekly, we are very involved with protesting the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and now in
where are you, Susan?
Toledo, Ohio. Sorry, and our organization is Northwest Ohio Peace Coalition. Sorry about that. So I don't know if Terry reported on back in September that we did attempt to block the exit and entrance of the Air National Guard here near Toledo, Ohio, actually in Swanton, Ohio, with civil disobedience with our bodies, blocking cars and trucks from coming in and out. We were not 100% successful. We had what was it, 4 county sheriffs out there with their vehicles and approaching us in a rather aggressive way and moving us to open up a lane. And then within 20 minutes, they got instructions to lower the level of aggression and become friendly. They actually were starting conversations with us. But anyhow, we were able to divert traffic onto lawns and the grass. At least we were able to do some kind of disruption. We were there to deliver the Veterans for Peace letter that notated in detail all the international and national laws that the Biden administration and the Department of Defense is violating with their Air Force. The National Guard at that base is exclusively F-15s related. And they are from time to time sent out to the Middle East somewhere in support of Israel. We don't know where. So that's why we were there with the F-15s. deployment from time to time, and all the Air Force action and military action in support of Israel. So no arrests were made because they became friendly, and somebody up in the echelons ordered the Lucas County Sheriff's Department to tone it down. So we were pretty disappointed. We were ready. I was one of them to be arrested, but it didn't happen. We were there. We held it down for about 2.5 hours, I believe, partially. So, in some ways, I think that's the best we could have done there. We were surprised we weren't arrested, though.
Well, Susan, you're part of that rare breed that is disappointed when they don't get arrested. I guess there's a few of us here. But I want to keep moving if that's okay with you.
Sure, okay.
And Terry Lodge, also from the same region and the same coalition, maybe might have something to add. You're muted, Terry.
It was rather humorful that you can't get arrested in Toledo. Marcy Kaptur, Congresswoman who is ranking Democrat on the subcommittee of the House that handles the appropriations for nuclear weapons, I think has made it pretty clear that she doesn't want any embarrassing arrests to happen. She's been in a somewhat tough re-election fight, and we've also been confronting her about the genocide, which she is utterly defensive of. And so I think that there's a lot of politics going on beyond. We've attempted to get arrested at her office. We attempted to get arrested at her favorite little military base, and nothing happened. Anyway, I just want to tell one quick story. I'm in Toledo, of course, Northwest Ohio. In the past week, Sam Husseini, reporter, contacted me in the wake of the disclosure over the weekend, last weekend, of the 2 pages of satellite surveillance summary where it appears that the U.S. is satellite surveilling Israeli preparations for the attack on Iran. And one of the interesting things that came out of that intelligence leak is a rather casual statement in the analysis of satellite stuff that said that it, at least it effectively says, at least, oh my, Josh, at least it doesn't look like the Israelis are going to be using nuclear weapons in this particular attack. That is significant because historically, for 60 years, the Israelis have maintained a policy of deliberate nuclear ambiguity, and the United States has enabled it at every step of the way, pretending that Israel may or may not really sure, can't confirm that Israel has an illegal nuclear weapons program going. Sam tried to make some of that in a news release, and some other commentators have picked it up. It's yet another admission among many that Israel has the bomb, and we are quite nervous and anxious about what will happen if Israel sets into motion the very high level tit for tat that everyone is anticipating. So
Right.
We'll see. Anyway,
That's actually going to be the next part of our agenda. Yeah, go ahead, McGregor. What?
I have to say goodbye. My ride's here for our Gaza rally.
Okay. Well, I'll share what you had to share with us. But I'm sorry,
No. You have got
it to the end.
You are perfect. We are together. You are clear. We're in unity.
Okay.
You got it. Bye.
Terrific, McGregor. We'll be in touch. That's too bad. But I'll share McGregor's proposal in a minute. I want to give Lyle Adley Warwick. You may be new to our meeting, Lyle. Would you like to introduce yourself and say a couple words?
Yeah, I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, the Eisenhower chapter. Are you hearing me, by the way?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I know my camera's off, but I wasn't sure about the mic. Yeah, member of Eisenhower chapter in the North Carolina Triangle area. We have done some demonstrating in support of the local Palestinian and Arab community, around the Gaza issue. We created a billboard truck, which can be the messages can be changed. Leslie, I haven't seen the truck for a couple of weeks now. Last I saw, it was an anti-nuclear message. We had a mushroom cloud, a picture of a mushroom cloud, and I think the caption was, "Who would vote for this? Would you?" So that's just a brief example of some of the stuff we're into.
Yeah, a mobile billboard, that's a great idea and something that wouldn't be that hard for a lot of chapters to do. So good for throwing that in the mix. Okay, so we've been here an hour. Our meetings are typically an hour and a half. We don't want to go over that. So the next part of this meeting, did you have something important else? Because we want to get into move the
I
agenda.
just wanted to ask Terry a question about what information they have that Israel's actually going to use its nuclear bombs against Iran. Is this just speculation? Did anybody read anything or see anything? Should we be more scared than we already are, is my question. I think you said something about it, right? That
And Susan did, for sure. Susan or Terry, you want to answer that?
Very briefly, it is rank speculation, but it's informed speculation. That is the most insane regime on the planet going on in Israel.
we see that.
And it is a number of pundits like Colonel McGregor, Scott Ritter, believe that if the tit for tat back and forth is begun, that Iran will respond with some pretty amazing damage and destructive forcefulness that will destroy the Iron Dome, and that once the entire nation of Israel becomes vulnerable to rocket attack from Hezbollah and Iran, that it is very possible indeed that their response will be a nuclear one. It's anyone's guess, but scary.
Okay, it's speculation. I mean, it's a valid speculation, but there was no particular evidence.
Yes, that one of the historic factoid is that in the 1973 war, things pardon me, things were going badly for Israel. And they actually loaded up a nuclear weapon on one of their jets. We're contemplating using it against Egypt. So it's not without some precedent.
Right. Well, Ken, you had something. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, two things. First, I just, for those who haven't been looking at the chat, I put information about Eleanor Holmes Norton's talk at General Dynamics with a link to an article about it. Basically, she was laying the keel. She was celebrating the laying of the keel for the Columbia, although there have been 8 previously named Columbia vessels, U.S. Navy. This is the first one that's actually named for the district, which she hopes foreshadows admitting the district as the 51st state. But the other thing I want to say, I'm sorry McGregor left because I wanted to ask her if she had seen Scott Ritter's argument recently. Scott asserts that Iran already does have nuclear weapons.
I don't think he's.
Well, he argues it persuasively. It's not a guarantee, but he argues it pretty persuasively. And if Israel believes that Iran already has a nuclear weapon, that would probably end their attempts to launch a major strike against
Mhm.
Iran.
So what McGregor had to share with us, and I'm really sorry I kept her waiting because she did a very good job of promoting this idea to the coordinating committee right before the meeting started. She's proposing to put together, she says she's talking to a lot of people, including people in the peace movement, even the disarmament movement, and definitely the Gaza no genocide movement, who don't know that Israel has a nuclear weapon. He says even in the peace movement, and yet they believe that Iran does. Um, and so, and there certainly is a risk that if Israel and Iran have a tit for tat, and Israel finds itself on the losing or vulnerable end, that they could. I mean, they've shown that they're willing to do anything. All right, and they do have nuclear weapons for a reason. So anyway, her suggestion is that we have the Veterans for Peace and our No Nukes working group, possibly in conjunction with a couple other organizations, organize a webinar on that very topic, on Israel's nuclear weapons, on the possibility of a wider war in the Middle East becoming nuclear, etc. And she wants to try to recruit some fairly well-known experts that would be that would attract a larger audience.
Well,
We talked about
Terry did a terrific presentation for the Ohio Peace Action Team on Israel's nuclear weapons. So
well,
he would certainly be a candidate for such a webinar.
that would be great. I'm sure McGregor would be very open to that, and if Terry is. Um, so we actually came up with a tentative date, looking at our calendars and a busy November and Thanksgiving and all of that stuff, and some of our various travels, including my own. We came up with a tentative date of the first Thursday in December, which I think it's December 5. Yes, the 5th of December in the evening would probably be like 7 p.m., 7:30 Eastern time, something like that. And we're going to meet with McGregor and maybe include Terry, other people who want to help put that together, talk more about how we want to go about it, who we want to co-sponsor with, and who, first of all, to try to recruit some knowledgeable and speakers. Um, and I think that'd be a great thing because, as we've all been saying, the threat of nuclear war does not exist in a vacuum. It's totally related to these ongoing escalating wars in the brinksmanship of Israel and the U.S. So I think that would be a very, very timely webinar, and obviously it interests people here. So shall we move ahead with that?
Yeah.
Terrific. That's something very concrete we can do in the near future. So that's exciting because this group, of course, that's still an educational thing, and education is important. But at our February meeting, some of you will remember, we had a big discussion about, well, we've been doing this internal education and sharing and done some external webinars with hundreds of people a few times. But we've been focusing primarily on educating ourselves and others as opposed to action. And there was a pretty much unanimous feeling that we should be moving into more action, more campaigns. And there was also a very strong feeling, large majority, who felt that they really wanted to if we're going to have an action campaign, to go for the whole hog of nuclear abolition and not just for a piece of that, like a particular weapon system or a demand for no first use, for example. But we didn't really develop it beyond that, and we've been distracted this way and that way. We don't have such a campaign. yet. I think it's time for us to be brainstorming. Also, to identify what other groups are doing campaigns that we might want to take up or join in. I sent out earlier, right before the meeting, I sent out the agenda for the next Warheads to Windmills meeting. And you can see a lot of that is focused on making progress in Congress, which is a tedious and sometimes thankless task. But I don't think that's necessarily the direction this group wants to go. But this is a chance to throw out a few ideas, brainstorm a little bit, and at least we have something concrete already in terms of, I think this proposed webinar on Israel and Iran and the possibility of nuclear war there in the Middle East is a very, very exciting and timely possibility that could attract a lot of people. But maybe at that time we'll have, by the time we have that meeting, maybe we'll actually be able to propose some very particular actions that people can take to oppose the escalating war in the Middle East at the same time that we call for the abolition of nuclear weapons. So what are your thoughts about future actions or campaigns that we might engage in? Alice and Ken? You're muted, Alice.
Pope Francis was terrific with the ban treaty. The Vatican supported it and, spoke to governments and worked at the UN. The Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, they were part of it, and he welcomed people. I'm talking to people that know the Pope, that he should get to Biden and tell him to stop giving arms to Israel. I mean, I don't think we're going to get to Israel. I mean, Israel is nuts right now. They're like in some kind of, I'm Jewish, so I can say this, but they're in some kind of stupor. They're like unconscious. I don't know. They're like demented, and so are we. We're demented that we're arming them. I mean, I don't know what our country thinks they're doing right now. And I'm very surprised that Scott Ritter said that Iran has the bomb. I know they don't have the bomb. They were so good in the negotiations, the treaty. I mean, we should just take the Ayatollah this way. We might not like him, but he put out a fatwa against nuclear weapons, and he said they're not allowed.
But there's discussion in Iran right now of reviewing that fatwa given the fact that they may be targeted with nuclear weapons themselves. And a number of experts I've been hearing believe that it would be possible within a matter of weeks if they really decided to push ahead to get together to get a nuclear weapon together. So at least it's a possibility. I mean, the escalating war could force them to move in that direction, which is another reason to halt it as soon as possible. Jim and Hollis, did I skip you, Ken? Did you have something, Ken? Jim and Hollis?
Yeah, I didn't have my hand up. I was scratching my ear, but what I was on a webinar with this unique group that meets once a week. It's the International Peace Coalition, I think.
Yeah.
And these guys are sharp. And one time I heard them say the problem is London. And I didn't know what that meant. Well, apparently there's a city of London that's different from London, the city. I don't know. And it's a separate economic zone of some kind. I don't know anything about that. So there's
a little bit of craziness among the founding central group of that International Peace Coalition. It's the LaRouchites, and they've always had this thing about the London and the UK being the core of everything that's wrong in the world. So that's probably creeping in there a little bit. They're obviously doing some good work, so can't take that away from them. But you have to just be a little bit cautious there, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim, did you have something?
Well, I didn't have my hand up, but I was scratching Hollis's ear. So, but one of those things about the International Peace Coalition. That's where you hear Scott Ritter and Ray McGovern and Ted Postal and a bunch of other folks. So I know, their connections might be a little bit iffy from well back, but getting a lot of information from those folks every Friday morning. So
You can also get that from Judge Napolitano. He's got all those people on his show every week on a regular schedule.
mhm.
Go to Judge Napolitano, Judging Freedom, and quite a good cast of experts there every week, including Jeffrey Sachs and Ray McGovern and all these folks. Alice?
Yeah, I went to one of their meetings and I was so impressed and I shared and everything. And then they called me, they wanted to enroll me. They're for nuclear power. I cannot support any group that's going to say that nukes should be used for nuclear power. That's like that nuclear power powers the bomb. So that's I don't know about LaRouche and all the other nutty things from all the years. I mean, they seem so credible. And the other guy that's really giving all our good guys an audience is the beloved Tucker Carlson. He has Jeffrey on there. He has Jeffrey Sachs. I mean, because the Mickey Matters, Ray McGovern calls it, the military, industrial, congressional, media, intelligence, academic think tank complex, they won't have those guys on. They can't speak. We can't hear our point of view expressed in the mainstream media. So, anyway.
Right. Well,
Ken,
I have a feeling. Jim, go.
did you
Go
have your
ahead,
hand
Jim.
up again, Ken?
I did, and it was just a note for Hollis. The City of London is the British equivalent of Wall Street plus. It's the area in London where all the big banks are located and where economic decisions for the British Empire traditionally have been made. And one of those banks, of course, was the Rothschild Bank, and that's where the LaRouchites kind of get tied into anti-Semitic tropes as well. So, yeah, the coalition does bring on some excellent speakers, among them several of our friends, but it is a mixed bag. So it's kind of like if you're going to eat that fruit salad, there are some of those pieces of fruit you want to pick out.
That's true.
Good
Very
way of
good.
looking at it.
Good way to say it.
Yeah, Rachel reminded us that Matt Ho has been speaking regularly on several of these forums, including the Judge Napolitano, and has he also been on these International Peace Coalition calls?
And Matt Ho was our recent guest on our last guest on on our radio show, and I clipped 10 clips from him with regard to the radio show, which are up on YouTube, which you can find. And he did talk about the idea of Israel bombing, using nuclear weapons on Iran, and I think he thought that was not likely. Am I hearing that right, Harvey?
That's,
Yeah,
that's
that was
what
my
Matt said.
impression. He didn't think at this point, but who knows what's going to happen once they
Yeah,
get
I mean,
back and forth, and Israel has got no desalination plants or airfields or.
Anyway, this will be a terrific topic for our next webinar, and we'll make sure we have some really.
If we still have a world.
If we still have a world, that's right. And in the meantime, I think we all should be thinking about what kind of campaigns we either want to initiate or existing campaigns that we would like to join in. Maybe we will have a November meeting on the fourth Friday of November. So I guess that'll be the day after Thanksgiving, probably. And but I think we should probably stick with that date unless people think that's just a bad weekend to do anything. And then perhaps we'll have some sharper thinking about what we can propose at that webinar, which we hope to have several hundred people at that webinar, action items that we can propose going forward that are aimed at ending the genocide in Gaza, the wider war in the Middle East, and with a message of abolishing nuclear weapons as a key part of that. So I think all those things are necessarily connected. This was a great meeting. It's recorded. Greg has actually taken some notes. So thank you, Greg. That's hard work to do, to participate in the meeting and take notes, I know. So we'll look for your notes in a day or two, and we'll look for the recording in a day or two. If anybody wants to share this with other folks, we'll follow up with Leonard Eiger, who did a great presentation for us today, and he'll bring some more energy and some action ideas to us as well. So invite anybody who wants to have some final words. And then it's 4:20 in the West Coast. You know what that means. So just
Miller
about
time.
time to go. I guess we're finished then.
Well,
Thank you, everybody.
yeah.
Great meeting.
All right.
Hour.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.